20 years ago, just to think that you could just log in, make an account, upload a manuscript, and 10 hours later your book is published. That was unheard of. I've wrote all my books on the phone, and people are just
Seriously.
like, what? Yeah. Obviously there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of like what I wrote about, that can you just keep trying, and eventually something will happen.
Well, hello, Alex.
Bye. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. It's a pleasure having you on the show. I'm very thankful that you accepted the invitation.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's very, very exciting to do this, and I'm very thankful to you for inviting me.
On your Medium profile, I have read that you have written 20 novels. That's an impressive amount of books. Where do you find all the inspiration? Where is it coming from?
Yeah, it's I think a short answer will be, just inspiration is from God, and just the talent given to me, and I'm just trying my best to explore it since childhood. When I was little, I was already writing down like little stories on paper, and just walking around the room in front of my parents, my mom just telling her the story. And I used to tell her all the time that I would, like to be writing books in the future, or movie scripts. So it's kind of like, that's the beginning, but and we'll get into that more later about like the base, I'm sure. But yeah, that would be, the main answer. Is just, the short answer will be from God, and just Him being gracious, giving me the talent. But if we also get into some details, kind of like additional smaller details, is I think sometimes I can be walking in the forest on a trail and just thinking about various things, life questions, and suddenly, oh, what if I wrote about this story, and I'd come home, write down a few sentences, and then I'll come up with a few characters, and I'll usually just start writing and see where it goes. And I've written maybe 5 other books that I've just got rid of, that I just didn't like them.
Right.
So it's been just ideas are always coming, and I just since I started the blog, a lot of these little ideas have just been turning into blog posts instead of books. But I'm still writing books as well.
So, which of the mediums, writing articles or writing novels, brings you more satisfaction? Or are they absolutely different and they cannot even be compared?
Yeah, I think for some people it's similar. From like what I've read on Medium, I read a lot of other authors, writers, what they think, and I see for some people it is very similar. For me, I think it's very different. And sometimes if I, like for example, my last book, 20th book I wrote, I had to do less work on the blog and more work with the book, so my mind wouldn't be distracted. And I feel like it's the style is a little bit different for me also. On the blog, I'm writing more about kind of more personal. It's more personal. I'm sharing my views about God and psychology, my beliefs on certain subjects, or I'm just trying to write a guide for people how they can grow with the blog too. But with the fictional novels, is I try to create a character that may be very different from myself. And it's inevitable that there's going to be a little part of my personality in the characters that I create. but I try to make them different from myself and then see their world from their perspective. So it wouldn't be as much of me in my in my fiction novels as it will be on the blog. And there are few novels that I wrote where I allowed myself to kind of inject the main character in the book with my personality more than others, but it's been rare. There's only a few maybe where I went that way, but especially if you write a villain, some of my books, a more villainous person is one of the main characters, and I have to really, try to. It can be even draining, putting yourself in that perspective and thinking that way. So yeah, that would be my answer for.
Right. So in a way, if the people would like to learn more about the author and about his imagination, they should head to Medium and read a little bit of your articles to see who's on the other side of the book. But if they want to get into the characters, the deep stories, the long conversations and the prolonged actions, they definitely should check out the books. And I have read that some of the books fall in very different categories, ranging from, let's say, cyberpunk to romance and horror. I wonder which of these genres are the most exciting for you, and which of the genres is the most difficult to write?
Well, that's good. That's a good questions. Yeah, it's one of my big goals have been to write in different genres, and there's few I haven't covered, and I don't know if I will. And that would answer, what would be the hardest. I think so. Start with the hardest. The hardest would be humor for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I've written a few humorous things like on my blog, but they're short. But it's hard to imagine me writing a whole book that is humor kind of based book. Maybe in the future I can, but
yeah,
right now I can't even imagine it. So that would be the hardest. I have some humorous moments in my novels, and the readers do tell me, hey, that part was really funny, but it's maybe one or two just moments in the whole book. So I think writing humor is the hardest. Second hardest would probably be a romance.
okay.
And my my very first book, excuse me, my very first book had a lot of elements of romance, but it was more of like a dystopian book rather. But that my very first book had the most elements of romance out of all of them, and that would be kind of the second hardest for me to write, I think. And I wouldn't say it's hard to write romance for me. It's just I'm not as interested in, not as open. I guess maybe I feel it's a little too cheesy unless I make it tragic. So
there's that dystopian part coming in.
Yeah, right. Yep. So my favorite is. It's definitely not everybody's favorite. I enjoy writing horror the most, which is the weirdest thing for my audience on the blog. Because I post horror. I wrote several collections of horror short stories, which I published. And once a week on the blog, I just post one of those collections. And it's really weird for some of my readers because they're reading about, prayer and how to deal with anxiety and how to treat others with respect, and then they have like a crazy horror story on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So it was interesting reaction of some people because even I had a reader, if they thought it would be like another inspirational piece. When they came like, oh man, I didn't know you write this kind of thing too. It just creeped me out. So it's kind of funny. I really enjoy my my most successful book is a horror book, Paradise Harbor. So I think that really also maybe swung me more into that direction as well, kind of seeing the success of that book and just being very satisfied with it.
So Paradise Harbor, which of the books was it? It's definitely not your first one. Is it like the fifth or the seventh? Do you remember the number?
Seventh, yes, seventh or eighth.
Lucky you were.
Yeah, around there. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
it's
it's the book that is the book that also resonated the most with your audience, as I understand.
yeah, you kind of like it brought a big moment of satisfaction as far as my writing career, because the first book was with a publisher, but that publisher went out of business. They got in trouble
Right.
and stuff like that. And then following that, I self-published books, and I would submit to different publications to get traditional contracts, but it just wasn't happening. And yeah, Paradise Harbor was my first book with a good traditional publisher, and they're growing rapidly, and they gave me a contract for a whole trilogy. So
Wow.
they liked the first one a lot, and they asked me, do you plan to do anything more with it? And I was like, I can write a trilogy if you want to publish it. And they're like, yeah, let's do the trilogy. So there's 3 books, a trilogy published with them. So it was like kind of like a big moment. And I actually wrote on a blog recently about it, when I wrote a little post talking about what is the most important factor. If I had to choose one single factor for someone to do well on a blog with, growing audience or whatever, getting more reads. And it was, I wrote about not giving up, basically. And I had such a long journey, I guess 20 years of, writing and different disappointments, but just coming back to it and keep trying until I finally got that, traditional kind of publisher contract. So it's obviously there's a lot more to it. I can go into that later, but that's kind of like what I wrote about. That can you just keep trying, and eventually something will happen.
So, from your 20 years of experience in being an author, I wonder what is one myth or one stereotype about writers or writing that you would like to break? Because stereotypes are connected with every profession. But most of the time, people imagine a writer like an old man with a beard, smoking a cigar or something like that, and writing in his lonely office somewhere in a tower. So,
Right.
so there are different kind of images and beliefs connected with authors. So if you could choose one, which of them would you debunk?
That's a good question. Just to choose one. Well, I think this would be like kind of like a general. Well, one big one I would say is the income. The income. A lot of the time when someone sees, well, you got a book published, they've watched a lot of movies about writers, and they got this whole media kind of thing, and they think, oh, he's making a ton of money now. He's got got a book out there with the reviews and people saying they're reading. So I think that's one big one, because like today, to really break through, with the books financially, you kind of have to be getting like a Netflix series, or some director has to pick up your book and do like a script with it. And there's some good examples of writers who are amazing writers, but for 20, 30 years they had to do some other jobs. Suddenly they, got a movie offer, and that's when, they got good money for it finally. So I think that's one big one. So a lot of people just have like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling in mind, and when they think of authors,
Yeah.
obviously that's this very, very small amount of people who can make a larger income with it. So I think that's one of the like ones that I've found, and I don't know if it's for every author, but with me, like people often just assumed for a while, it's like, oh, I must be making a lot because there's all these, reviews on there, and
Yeah.
he's got a bunch of books, so it's one interesting aspect of it.
So, is it enough at the moment for you to make a living just from writing? Or also, is it necessary to have a side job? Because as you have previously said, I guess like 95% people on Medium, maybe I'm overestimating, but that's my general idea, are doing it as a side project or a hobby or a passion of theirs. And it doesn't seem like many writers nowadays can actually live fully off writing. So I wonder, is this a position that you are in at the moment, or is it a position that you're moving towards still?
Yeah. I'm definitely moving towards being fully just independent on the writing income. I still do a little bit of part-time work, but it's right now I'm doing okay as far as the writing as well. But it is a big topic for sure for many writers, and I'm sure you've seen, like you said, many posts on Medium of people just worrying um, if they can do it. And since we talked about that myth, it is important to know for someone when they're getting into it, if they have just such huge expectations, where I've seen it even of some people that I've helped start blogs and helped them with just publishing their first books. They just had such big unrealistic expectations, like I'm gonna start writing and then I got this really great income right after.
Yeah.
That's very, very rare. You have to just keep going, staying consistent. And that it happened with me in my first book, where I wrote the book, publisher got it out, and I just had such big expectations. I was like waiting for a phone call from some director, and it's just never happened with that book. And for a year, I didn't write. I was so disappointed, but then I just got myself back together. 2 years later, my second book was published, and a year later, a third book was published. So it's just kind of, so I would suggest lowering expectations, not in a negative way, but just knowing what you're getting into realistically. So you do your best, very, very best, but lower your expectations. That way you can avoid the disappointment. So I mean, but definitely do your best. Give it all you got. So I'm not saying here or there. Just go. Work hard. But I do suggest just not imagine too many things. And it's always good to have good visualizations for the future and see yourself with good publishers and having movies done, but don't expect it right away. And I believe that God has a plan, a path for every person, and when the time is right, if you're consistent, you will get something that you need from it.
And let's say that you could travel back in time to the early beginnings when you just began writing, let's say 20 years ago, would you give some kind of a hint for the person that you were? Something, some kind of an advice, or just a phrase that he can hang on to during his journey? Well, what would that be?
As a joke, I would just say, keep the bitcoins. But but no. But in reality, no, I don't think I would say anything. I mean, I just have a lovely family, so I think the smallest thing, any small change in your life could affect things in a very big way. So I'm just glad how things have gone for me. I think just the way it is. I think everything was meant to go the way it's going. So we'll see where it keeps going. It's always interesting to see what's coming up.
Well, that's a very big strength for you as a writer, because it's not just interesting to see what kind of stories will come out from your imagination. It's also the whole life looks like a story that has not been written by you, but you're the character living it out without knowing the upcoming plot twists. So that's the perfect storm. And
yeah.
And how did you end up writing on Medium? Because I understand that you first started with novels many years ago. And when did you decide to start having a blog?
It was actually last summer. Well, before that, I had Wix. Do you know Wix? This
Yes.
website. It was just kind of a little blog where I would post here and there, nothing very consistent. And I had some subscribers there, but it wasn't anything big. But it was my sister and her two friends, actually, who last summer suggested Medium to me. And it's and it's even so surprising to me that I didn't know about this platform before. Just writing so long and reading so many things online for so many years. And I mean, I definitely think they could do a little better with, getting the advertisement about their platform out there, because it's so surprising for me. I haven't even heard of it until like last summer. It was I was just amazed. And then I saw there's some, famous journalists on there who write, and many writers who write on there. There's like ex-presidents on there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I think that the most popular writer on Medium is actually Barack Obama. If I'm correct. It was definitely unexpected. And if you haven't decided to become a writer in the first place, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have discovered that platform just by accident, because you would have. I had to search for it, honestly. I was searching for a platform to write to start my blog on. I was thinking, is it Wix? Is it Squarespace? Maybe it's Blogger? And then somewhere in the background there was this Medium thing that I didn't really understand. I found it, and it seems to be amazing. It has like its own environment, its own ecosystem.
It's crazy that it's just amazing to me that I didn't know before. But now I recommend it to everybody who writes. When they ask me like with advice for writing, I just say start on Medium, and that's gonna give you a really good experience. Like if they say I want to write a collection of stories, or especially if they say I want to write a book about my life, then I say, Medium is great for that, because you write little short stories about your life and see how people respond to that, and you can kind of learn and take some people's advice and improve, and that's going to aid you in. So it's a great platform. I wish more writers would know about it.
Yeah, the ecosystem is great, and the feedback that you are able to get from an audience that you didn't even know that exists there is fantastic. And the connections that you make, like if not for that platform, I wouldn't have had a talk with you or the people that came before. So that's great. And does writing on Medium take a big part or a big chunk of your writing day, or is it something kind of on the side that you do occasionally?
It's definitely a lot of time. Which is fine. That's how, that's a big effort I'm putting into just keep it going, keep it growing. Let's just try to do really well in there. In 2 months, I'll be there for 1 year, and I want to be at least at 10,000 followers. But I think I will be. I'm at like 8,200, maybe around that right now. So it's just yeah. It's a big investment of time, and I made a goal to just make sure I post every day too. I think since October, I posted every day something. And sometimes it's just something small, just to mix it in if I'm really not feeling it. But I'm making an effort to read other people's stuff. If someone comes to my stories, they comment or clap on it, I make sure to go back to their page and check out a new thing that they've done. So that it just takes up a lot of time, just everything combination. And if I'm writing a longer, and by longer I mean it's funny when you spend well, for me it's a long time. Like writing an article for me for 40 minutes, that's a long time writing. I know, like if it comes out to be a 5-minute read.
Uh-huh.
But that is long for me. I know some people spend a longer time, maybe hours, just constructing like a 5-6 minute article, which is fine too. And there's some really amazing articles out there. So yeah, but
how much time do you take to edit your article, or is it more like first drafts that can get released? Because if it's first drafts, that's amazing. That you can write that kind of a quality article without that much editing. So how does it go for you?
I only edit like a spell check. So I'll write it I use this note on the phone. It's funny too. I wrote all my books on the phone, and people are just
Seriously?
like, "What?" Yeah, because it's so convenient. I can just be sitting in the chair with late at night, just write a few paragraphs, and then I'll take a break. Drink some mineral water, relax, go again. So, but it's just really funny. But I use the Notes program on iPhone. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes.
But I'll just so I'll just write my article on there, and then I'll just go through it and edit spelling errors, and that's it. I'll just go and publish it. But I still miss some spelling errors sometimes, and sometimes people point it out to me in the comments, which is good. I'm grateful for that.
Well,
it's a good readers, and I know they're reading too, because it's like
they're engaged. Yeah.
Yeah, if they told me, great post, but you missed this word, it's great. I know they're reading, so that's I really appreciate it. And I go and correct it. So
I cannot even imagine how a process of writing a novel on notes in your iPhone should look like, because a novel is such a large piece that has to be fitted together, and like paragraphs should be moved and taken out. Like, that's in my imagination. You are the person that has written 20 books. I have written 0. So I'm just saying what I imagine. But yeah, do you later on take those notes and break down to, let's say, Google Docs, and you kind of rearrange and change places, maybe take something out, add something in. How's the writing process looking for? And maybe it would be very good to ask you here as well. How does writing a novel look from the first inception of, let's say, an idea to like the end product? Maybe you can guide the audience through the checklist that you have in mind when you're writing a novel.
Yeah, I can do. I can kind of go through the whole my personal process. I know.
Yeah.
I'll give. So there are writers who will just. I have an editor, but they have an editor, but they will go through their every chapter 30, 40 times, just every sentence, and they rewrite this word, take out this word. And I know some writers are that really, really great writers, but for me that would just be too tough. But that is a way also. So as I discussed previously, when I get an idea, and I can be listening to a song, or going on the run in the nature, or sitting by a lake, or it's just a conversation with someone, and some sentence just really strikes me, and suddenly I get like this whole like little mini plot in my head just from that one thing. So I'll go home to the notes, and the first thing I'll do is just write down like the main idea. And then from that point on, I come up with the first few characters. So I'll write in a note, I'll title it, characters, and I'll just have like, let's say, a very simple one that I had recently, Tricunius. It's this kind of cyberpunk sci-fi futuristic book. It's my last book, where humanity is on the brink of extinction, and there's this, not exactly a black hole, and I'm not sure what it is, on a edge of the solar system, and they send a space station there, that the ship with its own gravitational pull, and just the communications end after 6 months, right? And they send an expert there to see what happened, an android. So they're on this. So for that one, I just really got an idea from just seeing an image. I just saw like a picture of a black hole, and with some colors, and then there was like a space station. I was like, oh, wow. And that's it. And in my head, it was already a little mini plot. So I wrote down a mini plot. And then the next thing I did was Noah, write his description, how he looks, what his personality is like, just the base, the android, how she looks, what are the functions, and just start writing chapter 1. And I know some writers also plan out chapters, so they'll write, this is what the chapter is going to be about. For me, I don't do that. I just get into it. So I just start writing, and it just kind of flows. And once I'm done with the whole book, and then along the way, I'll add characters oftentimes. Like, it'll just come to me, it'd be a good idea to add this individual or creature here. So I'll do it. And then once I'm done with the whole book, I usually just send it over to my editor, and she I'm very fortunate that I have known her a really long time now. I mean, she's edited 19 of my 20 pieces. The only one she didn't. Well, officially Paradise Harbor books, the publishers had to have their editor go through it too. So I kind of had 2 editors in that one. but what she's able to do for me is kind of fully keep my style in my words, and the focus is more on just grammar mistakes, and she'll also give me a good feedback as far as she'll say, to me personally, this part doesn't make sense, but it's your choice. She doesn't change anything. She'll give it to me, and then she'll just give me feedback and say, it's kind of funny. I had this epic fantasy, medieval fantasy book, my longest book, 90,000 words, and
Okay, that is quite long.
that she added it. And originally, I had a different ending for it that she loved. I told her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, that would be great for a commercial purpose." And then suddenly, I just decided to go with like this crazy ending that I thought up in my head, and she was just like, "No, this is not good." I said, "People are gonna hate it." And I didn't listen to the advice, and I kept the crazy ending. And I think like that's the book that people hated the most. And I mean, I love that book. I love that book. I always wanted to do an epic, medieval fantasy, but the readers just didn't like that book very much. I know for sure. It's yeah. So he ended up like, so to make a point, if you do get an editor, someone who is seeing your book from their perspective, if your goal is to make sure that you are gonna get bigger audience, it would be wise to listen to the suggestions more of that professional from the outside. So like in that particular book, I didn't listen, and there were consequences. So that's kind of be the process. So I make up the characters and the idea, I write. She added sense back to me, and at that point I can, I do whatever I want with it. I can send it out to different publishers, or I can self-publish it right away. It's so easy these days to just self-publish, and it is I actually ran into this problem recently because one of the Christian books, faith-based books I wrote at the end of that last year, I sent it out to publishers, to some of the top Christian publishers, but I just assumed they would be okay to self-publish also. And I would just be like, if one of them wants it, I'll just unpublish it. And 3 months later, one of them replied and said, "Hey, was this one of the top publishers?" And he said, "We're interested in this book, to publish." And then I was like, "Whoa, great, awesome." And then they were like, "Wait, you already have it out?" And I'm like, "Is that a problem?" They're like, "Yeah, we don't republish." So, but I told them, "Look, I'll just take it off completely, just let me know when." So I don't know, I'm kind of like up in the air right now as far as that goes, because they said, "Okay, we're gonna think about it, and we'll decide if you can just take it out of Amazon, and we'll just republish it or not." So that would be another advice just to new writers. If you do self-publish, it's going to be harder to get it to a good publisher if you are, trying to send it out. So if you are just looking for a traditional publisher, just send it out and wait and be patient. But if you just want it out and share it with the friends and do the ads, commercials yourself, then self-publishing is a good way as well.
Well, that's a very interesting point that you have mentioned, because I think I have heard from the writer on Stoicism, Ryan Holiday, that writing your book is like running a marathon. And when you reach the destination where you actually end the book, you feel like, I should deserve a medal and the rest. They take you to the other start line and make you run again, because now the publishing parts and getting it out there, the marketing begins. So it's like a double marathon. But but what you have said right now is that nowadays publishing the books yourself is actually not that hard, because this is a question that I guess many people, myself included, that haven't had the experience of publishing books, probably would have in mind. How does the publishing process look? So as you said, one part of it, if you go the traditional way, you start looking for a traditional publisher. You probably send out your drafts. They look at it through. Maybe they ask you to do some editing. Then finally, there's some kind of a compromise, and at the end, if both sides agree, the book gets published, and then probably the writer gets some royalties and so on. But how does the self-publishing way look? Because I heard also other authors like the Navy SEAL Jocko Willink publishing his book about the warrior kid, I think. So people said that it's not going to be a good book, as I remember. And he said, well, I'm going to publish it anyway. And he published it anyway, and it was a great hit. So yeah, could you guide us a little bit through the process of self-publishing?
Yeah, it's it used to be harder, and in general, just getting published yourself, even like last century, it's almost impossible to get that kind of process going and done. So if no publisher picks you up, it was extremely hard to do it. There are still some success stories, like The Shack. It's became a huge bestseller. There was a big podcast with lots of viewership that talked about that book, and then the book became a huge bestseller. And I believe that if I'm forgetting the name of the book, it's about Mars, about a astronaut going to Mars. It's a really famous book.
Fahrenheit something. No, I guess that's another book.
No, it was written by a scientist, and they made a movie with I believe Matt Damon, based on this book. It was self-published too, and there are some big success stories as far as they go. But as we discussed earlier, something has to happen, as well, some moment, or you meet somebody. But yeah, the process is just to get it published. Now it's very simple. I'll go with Amazon. That's where I'm doing, but there are others who offer. Barnes & Noble has their own self-publishing platform now. Kobo, there's a bunch of them where you can go and self-publish with. So Amazon is the most popular, and they right now Amazon does, I believe, 85% of the world's book sales.
Wow, 85%.
It's a little scary, because it's a little like a monopoly.
It is a monopoly.
Or a lot like a monopoly. Yeah. That can be negative in the way that, they can reduce your royalties, or they can do things, and you can't really do anything about it. You just have to go with it because there's less options. But the positive thing is that, 20 years ago, just to think that you could just log in, make an account, upload a manuscript, and, 10 hours later, your book is published. That was unheard of, 20 years ago. So it's a very simple process. As I said, on Amazon, you have your manuscript, you make a KDP account, so Kindle Direct Publishing, that's what it's called. Once you have your account on there, you just say create. First you create a Kindle version, then you go to paperback, you put in all your information, author name, description of the book. They give you 7 tags for the categories that the book will compete in the rankings. You upload the manuscript, cover of your choosing. They will run the book for spell check, and you just hit publish at that point, and you choose your price, you hit publish, and in 10 to 48 hours it's out. it's really that easy. But the downside of that for some authors who put a lot of effort in their books, they have an editor and it's very nice language, amazing covers. They just do everything so professionally. The negative is right now there's just so many books that have no editing, terrible covers. There is just everything just looks a little ridiculous in the book. And there's so many of them coming out. I mean, we're talking dozens of thousands just coming out that often when someone says, I self-published the book, there's already a negative kind of like attitude towards that. So like with me, I know that once I got the traditional publishing with a good house, the attitude changed of many readers too with my other books, because they were like, oh, well, yeah, you choosing to do self-publishing, that was the attitude now. So the books are great, but you're just choosing because you could do traditional publishing. So that's the negative, because a lot of the self-published books are really, really good. And I know some authors who both the traditional got contracts, but then they decided to just self-publish because they have their audience and they know how to talk to people, advertise, and they're just doing a great job with the self-published books. So
if you have an audience as a writer yourself, is there any reason to actually seek for a publisher instead of publishing the book by yourself? Is it just try and tap to a different audience that the publisher can get you into, or are there any other reasons why people seek out traditional publishing ways instead of self-publishing?
Yeah, I think the main reason to go into traditional publishing is you can open some other doors. The bigger publishers, the top 10, they will look for authors who have been traditionally published usually. And so you're kind of giving yourself a bigger chance as far as that goes.
Right.
And I think when people seek traditional publishing, what they have in mind is also, as we spoke of, like unrealistic expectations. What they have in mind is the top 10, top 20 publishing houses. But that's so rare, especially today. Today, some of these accept, like a dozen books per season. So
that's not much.
That's the goal. But that's the goal too, because if you do get into the top traditional publishing houses, the difference is big, because then they just invest a huge amount of time in your book. They put it in all the Barnes & Noble stores. They put your ads everywhere. So if you are with these top very best, but usually you have to kind of build up to that point. Or again, if you just get that moment when you're very fortunate to meet somebody or something like that, then you would see some writers which struggled, but then they knew someone, and someone they knew suggested, let's say, to Netflix a book. Netflix made a, let's say, mini-series based on their book, and next thing you know, top publishers are asking for their books and to sign a contract with them, and because they know that the name is already popular thanks to, like, let's say, a series or movie, so they know that they also can have benefit from you.
That sounds a little bit like the law of serendipity, or like the Stoic idea of the dichotomy of control, that you only have a small layer of control in what you do. So you can, as you said, you should try to do the best work that you can, put your heart into it, put your soul, your time, your effort. to writing something as well as you possibly can manage. But once the book is out there, well, it seems like it's no longer for you to decide. You can try to get it out to your audience. You can try to market and advertise it. You might try to ask someone else's help to do that for you. But it just seems so unpredictable how things are going to turn out. And as you have mentioned, with so many books coming out every year, sometimes it's very hard to catch the attention of a reader. Like from going from the macro to the micro, it seems like it's the same on Medium, because there are so many articles also in your feed that you can read, but you don't just start from the first one and read everything to the bottom. Like that would take forever. So personally, for yourself, what kind of articles do you read? How do you decide to read this article and not that one? Well, what is the changing factor for you there?
So yeah, so the first ones I will read, and I mentioned it before, is like my biggest readers. I will support them and, check out their work too. But as far as just looking through the feed and seeing things, it's the title for sure. And that's why you see so many posts about the title,
Yeah.
If the title is something I'm already like, oh, that's not my thing. I'm not. It could be a great article about something I would like, but if the title is just a big, unknown, then I'm just not gonna be reading it. So I think being more clear with the title. I also avoid clickbait. So I know some people like those, where the clickbait, they will click it. That's why it's, called that. But I just try to avoid that. It just doesn't look good to me right away. Like, I see like, okay, that's a clickbait title. And that could be a mistake, because some of those can be good, I'm sure. So, but I will just go for, I see a title, it clearly states what it's about, and I will check it out and I'll start reading and I'll see what the writing is like. And if I like the writing, I will, finish it, read through, and I'll highlight for the person what I thought the best line was, or paragraph, or sometimes comment.
So when you start reading an article, what makes you stay and what makes you leave? Is it something concrete, or is it just the feel of it? When it doesn't feel right, you just go to the next one. Or maybe there are some actual determining factors that keep you reading.
Yeah, so the writing style is a big one for me, how it flows, and creating a connection. Like if an article on a personal level, if the writer is connecting to me on a personal level, like I'm reading and I say, okay, yeah, I felt that.
Yeah,
I'm going to keep going. But if it's totally disconnected, that doesn't mean it's not good, because there's always going to be a reader that will feel connected. I might just be totally disconnected. And I might still read it just because the writing style is really good. But I think developing that connection or with the reader, so they say, okay, I've had this in my life. For example, if you from my own posts, with the ones that are most read or commented, they usually are articles about how you deal with fear. I mean, that's everybody. So unless they really hate my writing, when they start reading, they're interested because they have some kind of fear. So they're interested to see what I have to say about that and how to overcome it, or anxiety, or being angry, or being mad. But if I write an article about Formula One, that's my least read one. Because it's if you're not a fan, you don't care, so you don't have any connection to it. So these articles that have It's just tiny amount of reads and views. Just, they're just not. So if you have one like, don't make decisions when you're angry versus here's this Formula One race, the angry one is gonna have a lot of readers. That one have almost nobody. So both are fun to write for me. But, well, of course, being on Medium, if you write an article like, how did I get this many subscribers for email, that's gonna have a ton of readers because everybody's on Medium there and they want to get more email subscribers. So that's that kind of personal connection. Like, if it's relatable to you, you will want to keep reading it. But if you're just disconnected and it's not something, interesting for you, then you just gotta stop.
So being a writer yourself, probably you have mentioned as well, you have had an influence on other writers. So you helped them start their blogs, you have helped them even publish or write their first books. But who were the people that inspired and had the most influence on you as a person and also as a writer?
Okay, so I'll have two answers for this one. So my mom, dad, my sister, that's three people, from childhood, the base. Both my parents were journalists. So we had a apartment packed with books. They literally had the walls and a whole hallway was just books. So even as a kid, just looking up, it was just all books, thousands. And I was just reading so many books. I must have read 1,000 books before we moved to US. So in the span of 6 years, I was just reading and before that, my mother was reading for me when I couldn't read. Just every day, she was reading books for me. So that's just a huge base for you, kind of ingrained in your psyche very deeply. So that's just such a big influence. But the second answer, as far as just writing, right? The writers and styles, and I do have few writers that I really, really felt like they've inspired some of my work. I would say my earlier writings and work is Hemingway. And I've moved away from that style because I used to be really heavy on the kind of darker, more depressed notes. And I the style too, I really enjoyed his style of writing. But
Short and precise and concise.
Yeah. But later I moved more. And as I started enjoying horror more too, writing, I think Lovecraft, if you've heard of him, his style, I don't write his style is so unique, and I wouldn't even want to try to copy someone. I want to have my own style, but I really liked the way he created the atmosphere, the horror atmosphere and suspense, and sometimes kind of not chewing it up for the reader. I really enjoyed that. It's the constant suspense, and sometimes you don't even get to see the thing that someone was so fearful of, but it's just keeping you in this suspense. And Edgar Allan Poe.
The poets.
It's just so good. His writing is so good. Really enjoyable. And influences in the most recent years is my wife and son. I mean, I'm very inspired, I'm inspired to write for my son too, because and a lot of my writings also have changed because I keep in mind, it's actually funny, when my wife was pregnant, I was writing this horror book and he was almost done. And I thought it was amazing. But she was pregnant and I was like, would I want my child to read that I wrote this? And that's it. I deleted it. A
Oh,
whole novel,
wow.
year writing, and I was like, nope, I don't want him to ever read it. So that's an influence too. So that's I guess even a triple answer, I guess. So I have the family that's influenced me, but also those writers, I would say, the biggest influence.
Have you read any of the more popular Christian writers like C.S. Lewis or G.K. Chesterton? Uh, if you read any of their books, have they had any of influence in your train of thoughts in terms like as a person and as a writer?
Huge. Yeah, I read a ton of Christian literature. That's in the recent years. That's the most of what I read. But I've stayed away from writing a Christian book until I've written 2 Christian books. The first one I wrote was called Whispers of God, and before that I kind of stayed away from that because I just didn't feel confident enough yet. I felt like I needed to, like you said, to read more works and to understand the Gospels better, and I almost didn't want to be, disrespectful to God. It sounds kind of funny, but I wanted to do it justice, just as far as understanding Gospels enough, understanding theology. So when I finally felt confident doing that, I enjoyed writing that book, and especially the most recent one. It's called Mr. Geist. That's the one that the bigger Christian publisher that I was telling you. They were interested, but then they found out I self-published it. So we'll see what happens with it. But I've really enjoyed writing those 2. And I've read Orthodox writers, C.S. Lewis, Kempis, monks, just some works by the so-called kind of like church fathers a long time ago. Just mix it up, see different types of Christian writings. It's very, very interesting. From more recent Christian writings is I think Paul Washer, Francis Chan. These are the 2 I would suggest to people to look for. That's just my suggestion.
Or Paul Washer and Kristen Chow.
Francis Chan.
Francis Chow. Okay. I'll keep those 2 in mind as well. I haven't heard about these 2 authors, so it would be very nice and interesting investigating them myself. So gotcha. That's also a very interesting detour you're writing, because adding to the cyberpunk, the romance, the horror, and the humor that is also on the way, there's also this Christian writing, which is, it's another segment altogether, and it requires your own personal experience. It requires a lot of reading. So I'm pretty sure, and it's probably you have a different sense of responsibility while writing this kind of book. Because when you write, let's say, a story that just popped in your mind when you saw, let's say, a poster, and you're thinking like, wow, this might be a very interesting story. Let's see where it ends up. That's like one approach toward it. But when you're writing about themes that have been in your tradition, well, let's say, over 2,000 years or more, that's another weight that you carry together with yourself in the process. So does it feel difficult to actually end the book in this genre? Because in the other books, it seems like that's the end of the story, and I'm satisfied with this. Does it take longer to be satisfied when you're writing on a theme of Christianity?
Oh, I didn't feel like it too much. I felt very I would say inspired when I wrote these two books with a kind of a more clear vision maybe than for the other ones. Just, trying to pray and, just write honestly with, trying to stay true to what I believe and to what I believe is right. And the last book I wrote, the Christian book, I had a few kind of versions for the end. So, but it wasn't too tough. I chose one and kind of went with it. I think it conveyed the message. I was trying to focus on the particular like Christian message about forgiveness and overcoming difficulties, and experiencing loss. So that's kind of like my last Christian book with themes.
Was this book written before the recent events that started happening in your home country, or was it?
No. This one's after. Yeah, this was last December. Yeah,
Last December.
Yeah. So it's after. Yeah,
So
but I mean, it's not very connected to that. I would say. I mean, I've had blog posts about it, so about the situation and the feelings about it, and I've written poetry about it, but I haven't really have any ideas yet as far as like for a book, something like that. Maybe in the future could be something more of a realistic kind of thing, just to. But again, then I would just have to really, really, get into it and study about everything that's happening in detail, I think, to give it justice. That's also really hard, I think, when you are writing about real events. It can be very easy to go off track, and then you don't do justice to the people, either people who got hurt, or you just don't do kind of like a truthful reporting, so to say, So I think that's also very difficult. So you really have to, I think, be very, very focused and serious to do it right. So maybe in the future that could be a good challenge, and and if I wrote something like that, my goal would be, not just, explore another genre, but to help someone understand, as the situation, or just to have a positive impact. So that would be the main goal.
Do you still have any relatives or friends living in Ukraine at the moment?
Yeah. Friends, cousins. My grandma actually passed away when the war started, and we do think, the stress just was so much. She was older, and she had some health issues, but just the stress, I think, also influenced big time, because it's just such a you can imagine the level of stress that people that are there, even people who are here, Ukrainian, they experience very high level of stress. Well, people who are experiencing like a war environment, it's very hard to, I think, to imagine for someone, unless they've, experienced something similar, like traumatic events, then they can really relate. But I think it's very difficult for people who never experienced something of high traumatic level to relate.
No, I could not relate to that in a personal level in any kind of way. The only thing that we have is collective history, because post-Soviet countries have been in a similar situation in the past, in the last century. So that's it has been part of the culture since whenever my memory came to be. So yeah, we understand that there's the pain and suffering, not personally but collectively.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that is true. Well, anyways, Alexander, do you have anything in mind for the future? Is there anything spurring in your mind and your imagination, something trying to break free in the upcoming year?
It's so funny because since my second book, I've been telling my wife this is probably my last book. And it's every book. And she was like, when I wrote this latest book out, she was like, I thought this previous one was your last book. And so that's it. I can't say that anymore. I don't think it just comes, you know. Cause so I think every time, genuinely, I think like, okay, that's probably it. So this last book, 20 books, I'm so satisfied. I'm thinking, okay, that's probably it. But tomorrow I might get an idea and start writing. You know, it's just that's what happened with this last book. You know, I wrote Mr. Geist, and I was like, what a great way to finish a writing career with such a nice Christian book and a message of, you know, forgiveness and, you know, overcoming difficulties. It's just such a good way to end, you know, the writing career as far as not blog. And that will be transition, right? I'll be like, I'll end there. And then, you know, 4 weeks passed, and I just had the big urge with this, you know, sci-fi book I just finished and published. And so I can't say anymore.
Yeah.
So, I kind of have a little urge to write a second part of the most recent book, but I just want to wait a little bit and see, maybe, so possibly a continuation of that one, but I'm not certain. There have been, I used to have a list of, you know, ideas of books to write about in the future, themes. So, but yeah, it's just still no. Because like if I write when I don't feel inspired, it just becomes a process of like tough labor rather than, you know, this flow that I'm enjoying. It happened only with one book. That's the longest one I told you about, the medieval fantasy epic.
Yeah.
And it was just, I was so determined to write in that genre, the way I wanted it to sound. And it was just such a work of labor because it wasn't coming from inspiration. It was just like every day I wrote a little bit, and I had to it just felt tough, you know, and I felt so satisfied when I finished. And it's my reader's least favorite book. So,
that was a lot, actually.
Contrast. Yeah, it's just such a big contrast with, you know, the books that are like Paradise Harbor. You know, it's just, I was so inspired. I wrote the whole novel in 3 weeks. It was,
wow,
you know, 50,000 words in 3 weeks. And I was just so into the character in the 1920s. I was listening to 1920s music nonstop during those 3 weeks. I was eating like the main character, drinking black tea late at night like the main character. I was just really into it, and it was just flowing. It ended up being my best book. So so it just connects to the whole thing. Like I think I have to be inspired to write another one, and I'm just not gonna force, you know, if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So yeah. For now, just the blog is for sure. You know, I'm writing that, and I'll be doing that for sure.
And for the people that would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, so obviously Medium, that's one place, and Amazon profile, that's another one. You can follow me. My Facebook page, my author page. It just says author Alexander Semenyuk. They can message me there too with any questions. I think that would be the top 3. I've tried to limit kind of like my media as much as I can. It's just taking up a lot of my time. So I'm just on Medium a lot, but as far as other social media, I'm just spending very, very small amount on there. So, but I will always respond to messages and comments.
Gotcha. Well, I will link everything in the description below for the people who would like to maybe reach out and contact you. And it was a pleasure, man. It was very, very interesting to listen to you and your story, about your stories in your life. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great. I loved this conversation. It was a really great time.
Maybe after a couple of books that will come out in the future, we could have a second round.
Yeah. Or if some huge happens, right? I'll just come back right on.
Yeah, there's still so many questions that I would like to ask, but respecting your time and the time of the audience, let's keep it for part 2.
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alexander. Until next time.